In this lesson, you'll learn how to use Eclipse to test code and find and correct errors. We'll make some changes to your code and see how to use the tools to test and debug your app. So please bring up Eclipse with your first app workspace, as I've done. Open up the debug perspective, and we'll begin by removing any breakpoints that we have. Clicking the X here, click Yes. And we're also going to remove any tasks that we have. Now you can also remove a breakpoint by double-clicking it. So if I had set a breakpoint here, if I double-click again, it goes away. Now let's see what happens when we introduce a syntax error into the code. Let's remove the right parenthesis in the setContentView method. You'll see an error indicator appear to the left. So if I hover over it, we'll see it's telling us to add a right paren to the statement. Let's put the right paren back, and we see the errors disappeared. Eclipse is pretty good at catching syntax errors and suggesting corrections. Now we're going to add some code to your app and do some additional debugging. Here's a graphic showing the code we'll be adding if you need to go back and refer to it. We're modifying the onCreate method we looked at in a previous lesson. If you recall, it's the method that sets up our screen display when the app is first started. We're going to be adding this code a statement at a time and analyze what we get. So let's go back to Eclipse, and we'll first add a statement to declare and set the initial value of the integer variable test. And we get an error message telling us that variable test isn't being used. It's just an information error and won't stop execution. But let's add a statement that uses that variable. We'll do that here. We see the error message go away for the first statement, and now the same error appearing for the second statement because we haven't yet used the variable use, which we'll do soon. But first, let's set a breakpoint for our new statement. I'm going to set it here, and we'll run debug. Save our changes. Now we see the statement highlighted, so execution has stopped here. And let's see how the first variable we created is showing up in the variables window in the upper right. There it is, variable test, and the value is 1. Now you can see how valuable this ability is in debugging. Using breakpoints in the variables window, you can check the status of your variables at a point in app execution to give you a good lead on what might be going wrong in your code. Now let's figure out a way to use that second variable and eliminate our error. I'm going to use it in a demonstration of how to generate a message on the log file to show you another debugging technique. Let's add a statement in our code that will create an information message on the log file. The I here indicates an information message. App test is the message tag, and my message is the message content. Now notice we have another error message appearing. Let's look at it. It says log can't be resolved. Now you see the little light bulb here. If I click on that, I get some suggestions about what to do. Usually the first suggestion in these lists is the one to use. It's telling us we need to access the log utility. What we want to do is add the reference to the log utility. So we double-click that. We notice that the error message has gone away here. And if we look up at our import section, we see that this import has been added. Now, you'll see this quite often during your Android Java programming. Import statements are used only to include the Java and Android packages and classes you need. So when you add code that requires a class you don't currently have access to via an import statement, you'll see this error message and suggestion that you add it. Now let's go down and we'll clear the breakpoint and run the app again with the debug button. Save changes. Then look down here in the logcat window. And if we search for the word my, we see my message appearing. Now let's go back to the Java window. And in our Java code, we're now going to include a statement that uses the variable use variable and create another message in the log. Here's the statement we'll put in here. Now, why can't we just use variable use the way we did my message up here? It's because the log function requires two text fields, as we see in this previous statement. So we use the toString method of the integer class to convert variable use to a text string. Now, this demonstrates something you'll be doing frequently in developing your Android apps. That is, figuring out what parameters a method requires to function. The parameter configuration is called the signature of the method. In object-oriented programming, we don't care how a method achieves what it does, but it's critical to know what the proper parameters are for using the method. So now let's click the debug button and see what we get. We're not getting a syntax error. And if we go back to the log window, now another way to look at these is to click on your session filter, and we see the two messages appearing. Now these multiple occurrences are because we've run the debug multiple times. So we see both of our entries, one with the text my message and the other with the number 1. So that's a quick run-through of using Eclipse to debug your app. And knowing these basics should give you a good start at understanding and using Eclipse debugging tools.